Hello, thinkers. Welcome back to another episode of the Apex Arena. In this episode, we discussed morality. We actually went quite deep into morality from what is good, what is bad, and we stretched morality to its metaphysical limits. And secondly, we also discussed some moral theories like utilitarianism, like consequentialism, like virtue ethics, and some more of them. So the first half of this episode is going to be for us to establish what morality even is and take it to its logical extremes, and in the second half we discuss more on the theory aspects of things. So I hope you enjoy this episode. There will be a part 2 of this as well soon, in which we discuss about more moral theories. And for anyone who's new on the channel, we go quite deep into philosophy. So if you're not comfortable with it, if you do not care for truth, or if it hurts your head, then I recommend turning off this video right now. Otherwise, you are welcome to join us and uh, take on this journey to understand morality. Anyway, also, if you want to be part of these discussions, I recommend you email me on my email ID, and that way I can set up a meet between the two of us in which we can debate, discuss whatever, or you can simply like send me funny things on the mail. Anyway, let's hurry up and begin this episode. I have started recording. So what we can start with, okay, is because you like proposed a lot of ethical topics, right? A lot of these are meta ethical
Yes.
in nature. Some are normative ethics. So what we can start off is by defining what is ethics or what is morality, and then we can dive into how we can then go step by step into it and discuss topics within itself. I would
Yes.
personally say,
But
okay, this is my opinion on this.
hmm,
Morality is the philosophical proposition of deciding what is right and what is wrong.
yes,
And
the crux is actually not. Actually, the difficulty is not in defining what is morality, but rather defining what is good and what is bad. That is very difficult. So, for example, we certain action X is wrong, but we do it as a qualitative thing, right? So, for example, if I say that the tree is green, so I am not equating tree and green. I am saying that green is a property of the tree. So that's how we distinguish. And so when I say that murder is wrong, I'm not saying that murder and wrong are the same thing. I'm
right,
saying that wrongness is attributed to murder, and so
right,
wrong is a property of murder. It's not the same thing.
right,
So
right.
uh, when we do that distinction, it's quite clear that wrongness, or basically what is bad, is quite unclear or indefinable. What is actually the definition of that wrongness within? So because I have never seen someone actually define what is bad and what is good, I take a moral non-realist stance, because that the problem here is that most of the things, whenever you discuss with someone what is good and what is bad, you at last go to a point where that person says that okay, well-being is good and non-well-being is bad. So but again, you have just given a property of well-being as goodness, but you have not at all distinguished between them, and you have not defined what good is. Because if one person says that well-being is equal to goodness, then what we can construct a sentence is that, for example, well-being is good, and because good is well-being, so we can say well-being is well-being. So that does not make any, that's just
Certainly not.
tautology. So, rather, the I think motive of our discussion today would be to actually come up with a very distinctive, or rather important definition, not conclusive, but at least try to make it conclusive, that what actually is goodness and what are the different ethical frameworks that try to answer this, and how actually do they succeed. So, what do you think? Which ethical framework should we start from?
Okay, so firstly, I really liked your analogy of a leaf and its color, right? So the color of a leaf is green. It's a property, just like how murder
Yes.
can have the property of wrongness. In that scenario, if you were to ask people what is green, I don't think most people will be able to define green as okay, in the spectrum of light, everything, if you remove everything else, this light spectrum in this frequency is green.
Yes.
Most
Yes.
people are going to say
Yes.
green is green. So at least we
Yes.
can agree that people not being aware of what defines the property of wrongness does not mean that property of wrongness is unreal or non-real. I mean, it can be, it cannot be, but it doesn't necessitate like it doesn't make it that it definitely is not real. Maybe it is real, maybe it's
What I
not
would
real. We
say
can't
is that
say from people's understanding of it at least.
yes, because the I think problem is that green, like comparing green and comparing moral goodness or badness is only good as an analogy, because green can be kind of described like scientifically saying
Right.
we can actually describe what green is, or basically it is a wavelength that we perceive as green, right? So that is the wavelength of light, that is a frequency certain, and so we see it as green. So we have just, the brain tells us that it is green, therefore it is green.
Right.
But even with that perceive, even with that perseverance, we cannot actually understand what good and bad are, because green is independent of human conviction, right? Green exists, or that wavelength exists without humans being there, without anyone being there. It
Right. Right.
exists, but without human being there, good and bad does not have anything in there. So if I say that murder is wrong and tomorrow no organism lives on this planet, then no good or no bad exists. So we can rather, like for example, if I take a dish and I taste it and I find it to be having a certain taste, and then I put salt in it, and so I understand that after putting the salt I have got another taste. So I would not say that something magical has been happened. I just say that the taste which is now is due to that salt, because that's the only thing which I added.
Right.
So rather, comparing that to this scenario, we can understand that if only with human beings the morality comes, then morality is not objectively in the sense that it is independent of human conviction. Rather, it is just present due to humans being there. Being there.
Got it. But assume this. So let's say 1,000 year back, when we like, or even earlier, when we did not know there was like proper space or anything, right? We all we understood was the planet is the world. If at that point someone were to say that I'm going to remove all the green things in the world, including all the plants, everything, and would green still exist? Is it still real, or is it just real in the sense of a description of certain things? So people might come up to the same conclusion that no, green is only real as long as there are human beings to see it, or as long as xyz things that we recognize as green are there. But now we know that it is a certain frequency of light, and as such, as long as there is light, there is some aspect of green everywhere, and that is now we can go on to photons and everything. So similarly, now we cannot claim that because we have gotten a deeper understanding of it. Morals as we understand them right now might agree with your premise that they are only contingent on human understanding, or at least biological life's understanding on what is right and what is wrong. But we don't know, right? So can we necessarily claim that it doesn't exist beyond our society or beyond society in general? Or could it, depending on how like real it is, metaphysically speaking, or like you get my point, right?
This actually strikes the point of Mackie's argument from queerness, where he actually says that if morality would have been object, or it real claim, then it would be very unreal or basically very difficult to understand property of the universe. Like for example, we get charge. We get charge from different kinds of particles which are fundamentally present. And so, if we assert their property, so we got charge, we got spin, we got mass. So all the things we have. But if fundamentally, in such a way itself, if morality would have been present, then it would have been very difficult clear, which it be very confusing to understand. And
Right.
somehow, in any experiment that has been ever happened, we have never observed something that corresponds to the actual concept of morality, and therefore, because we have never actually come up with that, it's actually reasonable to believe that there is nothing such as morality in objective sense.
Got it, got it. I mean, when, for example, we are trying to measure distance, right? So a two-dimensional plane we are trying to like understand. Before all of the
Mm.
sophisticated instruments that we had, before we were able to like determine atomic size of difference and the fact that this is dimensional in nature, we could still do it by our hands, by things around us. Maybe it was not as sophisticated, but the general principle remained the same. Can you not say the same thing for morality then? Then perhaps it is a lot more sophisticated than we understand it, but our application of it is in alignment with its nature.
I think I would be skeptical of that. If we look at devices or anything that is scientifically present that we can measure, for example, anything, we know that it exists. At least we know that it exists. And of course, I can see that the moon is different from the Earth. The Earth is not
Right,
just
right,
same as the moon. So
right, right.
we can see there is distance, but I cannot measure that 5,000 years ago. But I still knew that it is, of course, separate things. I, of course, knew that there is something that is shining. I, of course, knew that it is light, but I did not knew that is made of photons or all the other
Yeah,
things
yeah,
that are present. But
definitely.
surely there it is. And even if no humans would be there, there would be light, there would be separation of Earth and the Moon. It would have not been the case that when humans disappear, all the things just become one. So I can rather say that because it is very obvious and very logically also coherent, because right, the law of non-contradiction basically says that the proposition and its negation cannot be true at the same time. So
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Earth cannot be both Earth and not Earth at the same time. So,
Right.
but I can actually say that these things are very correct without any humans being ever present. And it was obvious 70,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, today, and even 1 lakh years after.
Right.
But moral propositions, we can very well imagine that if humans would have not been here, there would be no one to actually evaluate what moral values are or what good and bad things are. So, if we were to just evaluate these things on the most strictest definitions of objectivity, which are, something which is wholly independent from human conviction, then there are very few things that are actually true. And morality does not come under it. So, because morality is by definition human conviction.
Got
So,
it.
when that is there, so rather I cannot say that it exists objectively, but I can say that objectively all humans subjectively agree on morality.
Got it. Would you say that beyond human beings, for example, let's say in animals, there is some form of some semblance of a right and wrong for each species? Like they have their own understanding of what right and wrong is, and it has a general sort of trend that there is some overlap beyond between all the species and what they define as right and wrong, or is it completely subjective on the basis of species?
Can you please make
Okay,
it
okay.
clear?
So you said that morality cannot exist beyond human societies or at least human beings, right? This beyond the species, morality does not exist in objective reality like how distance does. What I am
Hmm.
asking is, uh, let's expand it, right? So let's remove human beings and let's expand our scope to other life forms. So, for example, lions or chimpanzees or what do you call birds or octopuses. Uh, each set of animals do have a defined way of how they act, what they do, and what they usually avoid doing. Uh, that could be a sort of proto morality or how morality is understood by them. Would you say each species has its independent morality then, firstly? And even if that is the case, would you say that there is certain overlap between species? For example, tigers, although they are solitary creatures and they don't like interacting with others of their species, they wouldn't go out of their way to kill another tiger for meat until and unless some particular thing happens. So, interspecies murder might not be. Intra-species murder might not be as common as, for example, interspecies murder, simply because that might murder is wrong might be in some form a moral standard amongst all species.
What I would like to say is that yes, proto morality is a thing and it exists, but not as advanced and not as actually complex as human beings have. Uh,
So
but it is
sophistication
also
of
the case
morality
that
is perhaps then a human construct. The way that
yes,
we
sophistication is
have
morality.
complexified it, that is the
Yes,
human construct.
like for example, one animal can feel that, of course, I will protect my children and my wife, like lion, of course, does. But they won't condemn if, if a lion sees another lion just forcefully raping another female lion, he would not condemn them as we do, right? That's far beyond their comprehension and far beyond. So I think morality in animal beings is basically just living better and living just that would actually make their life more like it would ensure the longevity. And even at the basic level, the most basic principle is pain and pleasure, right? Consciousness is just based upon those two things that I have pain and I have pleasure.
Consciousness
If there is
strives to
pain, I have.
exist. The more it can
Yes,
exist, the
yes, yes, yes.
further along that path it will move, and that could be maybe termed as the, what do you call, queerness of morality, is that consciousness will strive to exist. If there is consciousness, it will strive to exist, and that will be termed as right. And consciousness striving not to exist will be termed as wrong. Maybe that could be the universal understanding of morality, or what is right and wrong, at least beyond human societies.
Well, there are again complexities into this because pain is universally disliked, and uh, it is like if there is pain, then I should avoid it, and if there is, but you cannot tell other people. There is no normative driving force, or basically, you telling them you should do or you ought to do some things, and this is where actually morality is kind of problematic because even if we define that consciousness is just, or basically the striving of consciousness is what is right and the non-striving is what is bad. But again, you have just actually put on the good property to the act of striving of consciousness. We have not defined what good is actually. So, what we can think of here is that, of course, one consciousness will survive, other will fall. But if that is the case, then it is difficult to comprehend that is that action right or wrong. If there is, let's say, food scarcity, and now one person will kill another and eat it, and so that is the thing which is going on. But it is of course done for the survival of his consciousness,
Right.
and if that is done, then we cannot say that it is wrong or it is right. It just is his, he has to do it in order to survive. There is no right and wrong in that.
At
Similarly,
least
animal
from
world,
at least from his perspective, it is going to be right. We can say that.
yes, from his perspective. Therefore, it is, I think, kind of, if we look at it, animals have no morality. We cannot say that a crocodile is bad in actually eating those impala and all those deers because it does it. That if we replicate that with a human being, then we would be called as, the most cruel human beings on this planet. But when the crocodile does it, we cannot say that it is bad or good because it has no alternative possibilities. So,
Right.
what my stance is in this is I think I adhere to the principle of alternative possibilities, which is basically saying that if you have choices and you choose one which benefits, then I think that is the only action that can be termed as good or bad. If not, if you have no choice, then you cannot be termed as good or bad.
I quite like that one. Something struck me. I'm just like going to tell you and let me know what you think of this, right? So, the way that I understood right and wrong was that consciousness will strive to exist, and therefore, that striving would be termed as good because it allows the consciousness to exist as compared to something which doesn't allow the consciousness to exist. And consciousness is also a form of order, right? Like neurons get together, whatever. Like beings are what? Unicellular beings come together to form multicellular beings, and they consider themselves to be a singular party, right? So you could say that consciousness or collectivism or order, right, things being together, universal forces that keeps things together, would be considered good, and universal forces that like brings in chaos or entropy, therefore will be considered a universal bad, because then the universe will completely end up destroying itself. So the fundamental forces of entropy, like dark energy and such, would within moral framework of seeing the universe, the queerness of morality would be such that entropy itself would be the fundamental negative or morally wrong force, while on the other hand electromagnetism and what do you call it, other three fundamental forces that keeps things together will be the right what do you call it, moral stance. Hell, that could even tie into Hindu cosmology, in the sense that Vishnu, who is the universal preserver, the cosmic guardian who keeps the universe together, how will he do that? By promoting these fundamental forces that keep order or that disallow entropy, right? That is the point of his avatars, to make sure that entropy does not get too out of hand. And devas, because they represent forces that keep the order together, that is the reason the preserver of the universe is always favoring the devas instead of having a balanced perspective of asuras and devas. And asuras represents forces that basically entropy, basically expand the universe outwards. And when everything will end, because we know that entropy is ultimately going to win out, that will be the yuga cycle. At the end of it, Shiva, the destroyer, is what it represents, because it will become ultimate silence, right? That is why he's destruction, and he comes after destruction, because the universe destroys, there is void, and void is the word for Shiva. I don't know where I went, but like, uh, yeah, this is something that struck me as because the queerness of morality was an amazing point, right? Things aren't exactly how we perceive them within our society, and as such, like to define what is right and wrong, I ended up going on this tangent. What do you think about this? Then we can get back onto the topic.
I think we can say two lines here, which are distinctive but very important. That all humans subject, like we can say that it is objectively true that all humans subjectively agree for some things being good and bad.
Right.
So, which means that that it is objectively true that we subjectively agree, but that agreement does not cause that thing independent of human conviction to be objectively true, which is I think a bit confusing to understand. But basically what I'm saying, that of course we all agree on certain things, that Sam Harris gave the example of keeping your hand on the stove. So if you keep your hand on a burning stove, then of course anyone, even a sadistic person, will just remove his hand, because biology doesn't allow it, even if you are mentally anywhere. So you remove the hand, and unless you're an extremist, you will just keep it and let yourself burn. But for 99.99% of the people, the hand will be removed. And what he says that, uh, of course, it is objectively true that all humans subjectively get or perceive pain as bad, but it does not make pain as objectively bad.
Got it.
Right, the subjective agreement is important here of every human being, but the objectivity will only come when it is independent of human conviction. Like I like to consider objective morality as an oxymoron. It is
Right.
literally opposite, and like objectivity and morality.
Wouldn't
Objectivity by definition is independence from human conviction, and morality is by definition human conviction. So it can be very well said that, of course, in our human domain, it can be represented as if it were to be objectively true, but it does not make it objectively true. So rather, we can now look at different frameworks that are actually trying to define
make
what good
sense
and bad.
for objective. One last thing I would like to say before we get into the frameworks is that, to an extent, I would say that even reality itself is a shared hallucination of our five senses, right? I agree, you agree that X thing exists, and that is why we think that it objectively exists, right? Because even if you're using, let's say, a tool to measure whether or not something exists, that tool is still perceiving, that tool is still contingent on your own personal senses. As such, no, there is a concept of nominal reality. I think Kant gave it or someone gave it, what like true ontology is, and we just don't quite have access to it. So within our own senses, within our own subjectivity, we make tiers, and at a certain threshold, we call something objective, but it is not truly objective. Anything. What do you think of that?
Um, right, this is the line from Descartes, right? I think therefore I am.
Yeah.
Uh, so it was basically based on the principle of radical skepticism that we have to question literally everything that exists.
Hmm.
And as we have had a talk previously, and I was quite struck and convinced by that, yes, of course, radical skepticism will lead to just me being the absolute truth, or basically the experiencer. So the one who experiences is the ultimate truth, because even if I doubt that, then who is the person who is doubting, right?
Mm.
Uh,
Radical
so
skepticism then.
so yes, yes, yes. But again, I would say that along with me, or basically the one who is experiencing being the truth, I should also consider the law of logic to be true, because the fact that I am saying that the experience, the one who experiences is most certainly the only truth. I am distinguishing between the external environment, which is different from me, and the experiencing person, which is different from the environment. So there is a
Right.
clear distinction, and that is what is the law of non-contradiction, that you cannot be both you and not you. So I am myself, and the fact that I'm distinguishing something from me, the fact that I'm saying that almost certainly nothing exists, but I am the one who almost certainly exists, the
Right.
fact that I'm distinguishing is the evidence that, those engines of thought, which is the laws of logic, might be also some things that we have to consider as to be objectively true.
Hmm. I mean, there are certain schools of thoughts and philosophies which think that Descartes did not go far enough. They're like you are like removing all the assumptions of an external reality, fine, but you're still keeping the assumption of cause and effect and the assumption of that to see there must be a perceiver, and that is a what do you call it? An error in his logic, or at least in the logic of the phrase. I think therefore I am. For as far as I know, it is not the perfect translation of the actual term. I think it's uh, I am thinking I am, or maybe I itself is not quite there in his original French phrase. But aside from that, okay, let's for the I mean, there is no discussion if we don't assume a reality. So let's assume a reality and assume that we're able to get clear information on it, right? Then comes the question of moral realism, moral non-realism, and morals relativism, right? These are the three positions that you can pick on. So as we discussed so far, moral realism is at least extremely hard to prove immediately. It's not very logically sound on its own, right? Because it's not like distance, it's not like time, it's not a measurable quantity morality, right? So you
Yes.
will have to take either a bunch of assumptions to get to moral realism, or you will have to
Hmm.
spend like 5 years writing a thesis and 20 years debating other people to prove that no, there are objective morality. But in a very real sense, morality is practically, functionally speaking, we take a moral relativist stance in our everyday lives. Within society itself, we take a moral relativist stance. The only moral realist stance that people take is when they summon their religion, when they make universal claims, and that is a different rabbit hole. So we'll have to discard religion also. Are you okay with that? So we're removing religion, we're removing moral realism discussion, or we can also do that, and or we can simply focus on moral relativism as of right now. Where do you want to go?
Well, I would like to discard religion because even with religion, I don't think that there can be objective morality. The fact that a person is choosing Christianity over Islam and he thinks that Christianity's morals are better than Islam's morals, then you cannot judge Christianity's morals with Christianity's morals
Isn't
itself, right?
isn't
You
the
have to
fundamental
have some.
Yeah, isn't the fundamental claim with any religious person is that my religion is true and everyone else's is false? And then if my religion is true, then the morals within my religion are absolute.
Yes, but the fact that they are choosing the religion and they say that they I'm, let's say, choosing Christianity over Islam. I think that the morals of Christianity are better than Islam's, and that is why I don't have any other option rather to evaluate whose morals are better. So I cannot just adhere to Christian moral and then say that Christianity's morals are good. I have to have some prerequisites before those to evaluate whose morals are better. So I think emotivism is kind of playing here, which is basically your expressions and emotions. It's not that you have
Yeah,
got actual some things to evaluate, but it's your emotions that are trying you to evaluate a moral framework better than others. So even
of
with religion, I don't think it is justified that it is objective.
with religion, I believe they begin with what is true. Okay, is Christianity true? Is Islam true? Is Hinduism true? After they made the choice of what is true, then they're like, follow these morals. So it's not like X morals set appeals to me more. But beyond that, emotivism you talked about. So I think emotivism, from what I have read, is probably the strongest contender of a descriptive moral ethical system, in the sense that it describes how morality actually functions within society better than the other
Any
schools of
other?
thought I've heard.
Yes.
And
Because let's say first let's talk about religion, then we would shift towards ethical emotivism, automatically. Let's grant that Christianity is true. Let's say that their God is true. We don't have any problem. Their God exists. We have objectively proven. Let's say.
Mhm.
Now we have two things. First step is to say that the moral law argument you may have heard for their existence of God. The argument, for example, let's say just wrap it up very quickly. It would be like if God does not exist, then objective moral values and duties do not exist.
Right.
Second premise, objective moral values and duties do exist. And third conclusion, therefore, God exists.
Mhm.
Now, the
They're
first
using the
premise
God
is
to prove their objective morality. Yeah.
Yes, the I think the first premise is a bit problematic. Let's grant that God exists. Now what we have, they say that God is the objective foundation. It is a reference point. If I say that a thing is good and other thing is better, how am I saying actually that this thing is better? In the theistic framework, I would say that the better one actually resembles God's nature more
Right.
clearly, and therefore it is more better than the previous one. So
Mhm.
the closer it gets to the God's resemblance, the better it is in the moral framework.
Mhm.
Now, this actually tells us a very good explanation of what is good and what is bad. Just go closer to God and it is good. Just go away from God, it is bad. Now, but the problem again is to ought problem. How do we ought to do some things? Why do we ought to do some things? And this is, I think, which or even religion or even existence of God cannot solve, because if even if we grant that, let's say God exists, there his nature resembles goodness, why should I even care about doing activities that resemble his goodness? There is another, theory supported by a philosopher, William Lane Craig. He says that the divine command theory. So he says that God commands us to do good things, therefore we are obligated to do good things, and therefore we ought to do good things because it is a command, of course. Now, again, the problem with this is that two commands don't have any truth value. I told you, pick up a that command is not true or false. It's just a command. So that is the first thing, that even a command can't be true or false. What does it even mean that this command, that pick up a pen, is true? It does not matter whether it's true or false. It's just a command. So first is the thing that
I
can
mean, if
remind this of.
God himself is like the source of truth, it's like the department of truth is issuing a command. Would that not make sense? Then that command will be true.
Right. To first prove that is a because first God, then this is first reason. Even if we say he, produce,
Vishwasan,
I
your
don't
like
think
video, oh sorry, your audio is like it's lagging just a bit.
I'm saying that I don't have any good reasons to, make God's commands as authoritative, because what has basically, if someone says, of course, President has told you to not give these codes to Pakistan, then you ought not to give these codes to Pakistan. Yes, I would agree, of course, because there is an entire institutional framework going on to the president.
Yes.
But in terms of God, creation. Just let the creator in or premise. It's just there. And so if analogously I would say,
Yeah,
if
your
parents
like audio is lagging again.
actually, if
And
parents
and
create me, then
yeah.
why do they have to have authoritative force over me? That does not give any logical conclusion. So what I think is that even the existence of God, even if granted problem, we have to look at list frameworks, and I think emotivism is the best contender there.
Got it. I think within God's framework, it makes sense because God also created the world and your ability to act, right? So it's like, can you disobey the like developer's command if you're, let's say, an NPC in a game? It kind of becomes like that rather than a parental analogy. And if God Himself is the source of all truth, therefore, if you do actions which align with God's command, then those actions end up becoming more true or more right. You still have the freedom to do the wrong thing, but it is classified as wrong because it is against God. Does that make sense?
So, um, redefining morality as being something or actually any, not even any.
Yeah, again, it's
Why
lagging. I don't
should
know
it
what is
matter?
happening. Okay. This I'll need to edit this all out. Anyway, yes. Try again.
So, basically, moral realism and the existence of God, I God will not solve it, because creation, you said God is, God created you. But I don't think that, even if my soul is created, for example, then if my parents did not actualize into existence, then I would have not been here. But creation, what there is creation of me. So parents create me, but I don't think that ought can be derived from those authoritative,
the the the
factor
the,
here.
the issue with the whole God thing ends up being that because God is the source of everything, he also ends up becoming the source of all the philosophies and all the questions of ought, right? So God can define what qualifies under ought, right? It's a issue because God represents absolute order and absolute authority within these cultures, and as such, any question you ask, as long as they can directly prove that God asked you to do something within that framework, that's proven correct. right? The issue is when we're trying to hybridize it, we're trying to have God uh, also, and we're trying to have a society in which God does not exist also, and we're trying to put them all together. But I don't quite think. I think the moment you introduce God, the moment you introduce a proper religious framework, and God says XYZ thing, within that you'll have to think of that as the ought. But in everyday society, in society where there are multiple cultures and where we're believing that not necessarily one of the religions are true, they could be, who knows. But as far as we understand it, the material universe is there, the material society is there, there are laws that determine what we are ought to do, and now within this, assuming no religion is true, we're trying to prove morality. I think our questions of philosophy work much better in that frame rather than any particular religious frame, because again they can be like, but God said so, and how are you going to then argue with the source of truth?
We can be saying names, so rather we can meaningful discussion without.
Yeah, the religious thing is ultimately just the moment someone brings in religion, you ought to be like, okay, prove your religion, then we can talk within your frame. Don't tell
Yes.
me what your God says if I don't even think your God is real. It makes no damn
Hmm.
sense.
It is questioning rather the moral law argument itself. It's basically that we can literally flesh out everything because God created it. So God is literally the source of everything, because if God would not have created anything, then there would be nothing. So because God is the source of morality, and therefore you are saying that therefore objective morals exist, and therefore God exists. It's just circular.
Yeah, the
So
God, the divine or the moral law argument only works once you prove or once you assume the axiom that this particular religion is true or this particular conception of God is true. Only then can you argue that. If you cannot prove that, or if there is a question on that particular assertion, then there is no point of like saying the moral law argument. It doesn't work.
first is utilitarianism, and the best form of utilitarianism was given by someone called Henry Sidgwick in his book The Mathematics. And the basic idea is just maximize well-being for maximum number of people. That is the axiomatic structure of that framework. And so whatever maximizes the well-being or pleasure of maximum number of people is termed as good, and they have literally equated maximizing well-being with goodness. And so that is done in utilitarianism. What do you think of it in a general view?
I think it's cool. Quantitatively speaking, it's cool if you're taking the perspective of let's say an outsider from society. But I believe in practices it often erases the moral agency of an individual moral actor for a assumed group, right? For example, it could be that me killing my mother would end up serving the entire nation in some weird contrived way. But will it then be morally right for me to kill my mother? Just from my perspective, right? My life is going to be ruined the moment my parent dies. My psychology is going to be ruined. But you're saying me ruining myself is fine for the greater good. It is again a form of sort of a cult like thing. It's a sort of a delusional thing when you're trying to do it for a group. It doesn't it makes sense when you're taking a third person point of view. Obviously mathematically it makes sense, right? But it does not make sense for an individual actor, is what I'm going to say. Let's try. Tell me your example again of the doctor in the kidney.
So the example of doctor is that there are five patients and they will die if they don't get organ transplants today itself. And so what you can do is to kill an innocent person to actually get his organs and then transplant it into all of those five people. Now,
Right.
the problem again is the intuition. It is very counterintuitive, and it just feels wrong that why should we kill it now. Again, there is a problem because we have got this ethical calculator like thing, which is what we call utilitarianism. And so we kind of
only appeal to our intuition. And that's why I think ethical emotivism is strong, because why are we not liking the calculator that we have only built? Like, we take a calculator and then we put those value that we want, and then when it gives the answer that we don't like, we just say that the calculator is wrong. So that is something which tells me that the emotions are only the important thing here. And utilitarianism will certainly say that kill that one person. Rather, in his book, The Method of Ethics, he actually dealt with this problem where he said that no, you should not kill the one person, because uh, he said that in that individual scenario, it is justified. You should kill that person. But to actually make it as a general rule that whenever you see one person, you should kill it to give those uh, organs to their, it would, in a general view, for maximum number of people, will be bad. So if we just over harmonize it, it would be bad. But in that individual scenario, he also agrees that it is actually correct to kill that one person. But you know it is counterintuitive, and because it goes against our intuition, it is called as a better, or basically a good analogy to negate utilitarianism.
So,
And
why does he claim that it'll like when applied, this kind of reasoning, it will not be good for the society? Why does he claim that?
he said that only for one or two scenarios it would be good. We should not make it as a rule as to just kill everyone when we get these kind of situations, because by that logic we should just kill everyone in our family to just give all their organs to any hospital which needs organ donors. So
Yeah.
because he said that just making this rule as mass applied, that would not be good. In certain very simplistic scenarios, there we can apply that.
Wouldn't you say then he's like sort of contradicting himself? I mean, if the base principle of utilitarianism is collective good over individual good, then that makes sense. Kill your own family, give it to the hospitals to save maximum number of life. You have five organs, you can save five people. And if society, everyone follows it, then most amount of people are getting the most amount of good. It works, or is he simply
Yes.
saying it doesn't work is because it's highly non-intuitive?
Yes, that's the generalized view, because it's non-intuitive. No one will follow that as if it were a mathematical principle. No one will do that,
So
and
it's not
that's why
functionally
utilitarianism
possible.
is
Like
not
it's not
followed in such a
implementable
mass way.
completely.
Yes.
Okay, okay. So he doesn't quite disagree that it is. Does he disagree that it is wrong? Does he say that it is wrong to do that, or he says that most people just are not going to follow it and therefore you shouldn't?
Well, it would be destructive. That therefore he did not.
Then wouldn't the core claim also completely destroy itself? If your core claim is that maximum good for maximum number of people is better than some good for some people, then if you cannot apply it on these stress cases, and if you cannot apply it en masse for everyone, I think then
Therefore, the principle fails.
yeah, yeah, I don't think then utilitarianism works as a
Yes.
principle. If it cannot, if
Yes.
you are making arguments that, oh, it might not work for X scenario, that does not mean, so I am not going to follow your philosophy, right? If it doesn't work for
Yes.
everything, the point is it should work for everything, only then it is a basic principle to follow.
Yes, and therefore I think utilitarianism is not something that is very well applied. There are very highly advanced criticism of that utilitarianism.
You also convinced me. So, like, we are letting go of utilitarianism and consequentialism. That's out of the like water. We've already sort of discussed error theory. So let's like talk about more normative ethics. What are your thoughts on virtue ethics?
Um, I think virtue ethics. I mean, are you saying about virtue ethics, which are basically like, what do you mean by virtue ethics? First, tell
Basically,
me that.
virtue ethics is essentially whatever you do, that action reflects on your character, and you should strive for a better character. For example,
Uh,
if
okay.
I kill someone, right, it doesn't matter if killing someone is going to result in something, right? Consequences is not the issue. The point is, if I kill someone, how do I appear to myself? Do I appear to myself as a virtuous person, or do I appear to myself as a sinful person? And I should do things which make me into a more virtuous person in my own perception. That is what at least I understand by virtue ethics.
But don't you think there would be a psychopath's problem for this? They clearly think that they are very virtuous in killing people and raping women, and that's just the way that has to be for them. They just get all those pleasure. Um,
But
I
is
think
it virtuous
virtue
for them, or
ethics.
is this just allowed for them? Like they just do it because they don't feel bad about it, but that doesn't necessarily mean they feel like a better person doing it.
Yes, certainly there are very much examples that those feel
I mean,
good.
no, I mean, feel good is one thing. Like pleasure is like simply I feel good. I feel like I'm a better person for doing it. For example, if I go to the gym every single day and I am active and I'm helpful to the society, I can be like, yes, I feel like I'm a better person. Maybe that is what Aristotle is talking about. I think he also had like 4 or 5 things that it will converge towards. One of it was human flourishing and happiness and 4 or 5 other things. I'm slightly weak on virtue ethics, but it's interesting because I'm actually going to argue a person with a philosophy content creator soon, and he's going to make an virtue ethical argument for veganism.
Oh,
Yeah.
um, I don't think veganism is indefensible, but okay, we can stretch that out. But uh,
I think the problem with
what
virtue
I think is
ethics is
that
again subjectivity at the end of the day, right? Because
yes, yes,
how
yes,
can
of
you
course.
apply it en masse if you don't control at least what people understand to be virtuous? And the moment you start trying to control, as the runner of society, what people consider to be virtuous, now you are following some other set of principles to decide what people should find virtuous and what people shouldn't find virtuous. Then it defeats the point of virtue ethics.
Yes, because there are certainly very much kind of people. You can take Albert Fish, for example. And please don't search him on the internet. Your day will be ruined. One of the most horrific serial killers of all time. Uh, and I don't mean that, these very shallow kind of serial killers. He was the pinnacle of what human evil can be. So just don't search. But I was telling about him. He was a sadistic person, and he took inspirations from the Bible, right? He literally used the Old Testament, and was to just read those verses at the face value, and he just interpreted them as if pain was very good. And what he did was he would insert needles in his body, in his groin. He would put oil on the cotton and then put his into his butt and then put fire on it. All those things he did. But when he did that, he actually claimed to be working for God. So very clearly, whenever his interviews were also taken in USA, he was very virtuous about that. He also thought about it as a very virtuous act, as to serve God by pain. He thought of pain being very pleasing to God. And so these things actually kind of make it very subjective. You cannot like, if that vegan person is going to debate by virtue ethics, I think it would be necessarily for him to say that if you say that if you are being virtuous to your own image, then that's by definition what is called subjectivity. And uh, so virtue ethics, I don't think that they can provide an objective, empirical kind of thing. Rather, it
This
always boils down to emotivism, because even if we grant that you become virtuous in your own
Yeah,
character,
virtue ethics is
and
contingent. Like it ends up appealing to emotivism at the end of the day, I guess.
yes, because the things which you have preconditioned in your mind as to be good, when you act in that way, therefore you know that you are virtuous, right? Without those preconditions coming from your own expressions and emotions, you cannot know which thing is virtuous and which thing is not. So ethical emotivism is, I think, not a moral worldview, but rather a grounding descriptive like truth that this is what morality actually is. It's not actually dictating what you should do or what this ethical framework is.
It's
It's just
descriptive.
saying, it's just telling you that this is what it is.
But emotivism cannot, we cannot use it like as a normative ethical standard or in applied ethics either, right? We understand
Yes, we
ethics now,
cannot.
but the question ultimately when it comes to veganism, for example, it becomes what should be the applied ethics, right? What should we be doing? I think another problem with virtue ethics that I probably am going to ask him then is that even if virtue ethics believes two things, that I am a doing the right thing and I'm doing it for human good, even if everyone like operates from that, it can still result in things like witch hunting in medieval Europe, right? it can st- because they thought that they were saving society by killing heretics and women who are practicing black magic. That is what they believed when women were simply trying to practice an advanced science, right? So then you are going to say no, but what they understood was wrong. Now you're appealing to objectivity. Now you're talking about it was objectively wrong and you are now outside of the virtue ethical framework. So I don't think virtue ethics can necessarily be applied to society, at least as we understand it right now. I'll like dive deeper into it because it is a central argument. So virtue ethics are also removed. We've removed utilitarianism. Now let's talk about another form of ethical, normative ethical standard, which is deontology.